What if I told you that in a community with no DNA testing, no legal process, and no outside authority to appeal to, a single birth can set off a chain of events that a bishop cannot fully control, a husband cannot fully survive, and a woman cannot fully escape no matter what the truth actually is? What the community notices first. In an Amish community, a new baby is a community event. The birth is attended by a midwife and neighboring women. The news travels the same day through informal channels, a word at the fence line, a detail passed between women who have known each other their entire lives. Everyone hears, everyone looks. And in a community where faces are familiar down to the particular set of a jawline or the color of a set of eyes, a baby that does not resemble its father is noticed before anyone says it out loud. The husband's reaction. The husband is usually the last person to say anything directly and the first person to feel it. He looks at the baby the way every new father looks, searching for himself in the small face, the hands, the particular curve of an ear. What he finds or does not find registers before he has language for it. He says nothing in the first days. He goes through the expected motions, the gratitude, the prayers, the quiet pride a new Amish father is supposed to carry. But something has shifted in him that the people closest to him can already see. What he does next depends on the man. Some confront their wives directly in the private space of the bedroom after the children are asleep. Others carry the question alone for weeks, watching the baby's face change as it grows. Others go to a deacon before they go to their wife, seeking counsel in the only system available to them, which is the church. Two possible truths. Before the community reaches any conclusion, there are two honest possibilities that deserve equal consideration, though in practice, the community rarely gives them equal weight. The first is infidelity. An Amish woman is not immune to the full range of human experience, including choices made during Rumspringa, encounters with English men during market visits, or relationships formed within the community itself. The entire confession and discipline system exists precisely because sin, including sexual sin, is a reality inside every community, regardless of how plain its dress or how strict its ordnung. The second is genetics. The Amish population descends from a small founding group of approximately 200 Swiss and German immigrants. That genetic bottleneck, combined with centuries of marriage almost exclusively within the community, means recessive traits, unusual eye colors, hair colors, skin tones can resurface in a child whose parents show no outward sign of carrying them. In a community with no DNA testing and no genetic counseling, this explanation is available but rarely considered first. How gossip moves. Amish communities do not have phones in their homes. They do not have social media. What they have is proximity families living within walking or buggy distance of each other, sharing church services, community meals, work frolics, and the ordinary daily encounters of a life lived almost entirely in public. In this environment, information travels faster than most outsiders expect, and with a specificity that technology cannot improve on. The question about the baby does not begin as an accusation. It begins as an observation made between two women at a quilting frolic. A comment about the baby's coloring, a comparison to the husband's family that does not quite land. A pause in the conversation that means something without containing words. From that first observation, the question moves outward through the community in the way that all significant information moves, carried by people who are genuinely concerned, genuinely curious, and sometimes genuinely malicious in proportions that vary by person and cannot always be distinguished from the outside. By the time the bishop is aware of it, and the bishop is always eventually aware, the question has already shaped how the community sees the woman. She has not been accused of anything formally, but she has been looked at differently. And in a community this small and this close, being looked at differently is its own form of consequence. The bishop steps in. The bishop does not wait until the question reaches him in a formal complaint. He steps in because he has been watching the same community for years, and he understands what a shift in how people look at one family means. He begins with a private conversation, not an interrogation, but a pastoral visit that is careful and warm and pointed in a direction the woman can feel, even when the bishop's words remain gentle. He asks about the family, about the birth, about how she is recovering. And somewhere inside that conversation, he asks questions that are not quite about the baby, but that circle it closely enough that she understands what is being asked. He is giving her the opportunity to speak before the community's question becomes a formal one. In the Amish system of accountability, a confession offered voluntarily carries more weight and results in less severe discipline than one extracted through investigation and confrontation. What he does next depends entirely on what she says in that room. If she speaks, the process moves in one direction. If she does not, it moves in another. Both directions lead somewhere the bishop will have to manage for months or years. He knows this when he sits down. He sits down anyway because this is what the community requires of him. If she confesses. A confession in the Amish church follows a structure that is formal, public, and irreversible. She kneels before the congregation on a Sunday. She acknowledges what she did in plain language, not detailed, not embellished, but clear enough that the community understands the nature of the sin being confessed. The congregation prays over her. She is placed under a period of church discipline, which typically includes restrictions on her participation in community life, and a period during which other members maintain a formal distance. What the confession does not do is resolve everything it touches. Her husband now has a public answer to the question he has been carrying privately. That answer does not heal the wound, it names it, which is a different thing entirely. The community is required to forgive her after the discipline period ends. They are not required to forget, and in a community with this much shared history and this little turnover, forgetting is not something the social fabric actually allows, even when every individual member would say they have done it. The specific man involved, if he is Amish, faces his own separate discipline. If he is English, the community's reach does not extend to him, and his absence from the accountability process is a gap that some members feel as a profound injustice even while expressing forgiveness toward the woman. If she does not confess, if she maintains that the baby is her husband's, that the physical difference is a matter of genetics or God's will, that the community's question is itself a form of accusation, she has not deserved the situation. Enters territory the Amish system handles badly. The church's discipline system is built around confession. Without it, the mechanism stalls. The bishop cannot formally punish a sin that has not been admitted. The community cannot formally forgive what has not been acknowledged. What they can do, and do, is maintain the pressure of collective suspicion in a space where that pressure is inescapable. She attends church and feels the looks. She participates in community work and senses the conversations that slow when she approaches. Her husband lives beside her in a household that has become a place of unresolved tension that neither of them can fully name to anyone outside it. The baby grows, and as it grows, the features that started the question either soften into something more familiar or sharpen into something that keeps the question alive. Some women in this position hold their ground for years. Some eventually confess to end the pressure, whether or not what they confess is true. And some, the rarest, find that time in the baby's changing face gradually closes the question without any formal resolution at all. Demanded forgiveness. Whether she confesses or not, whether the truth is ever definitively established or not, the community's requirement of forgiveness operates on its own timeline and its own terms. For her husband, forgiveness is not optional. It is a theological obligation that the bishop will address with him directly if the marriage shows signs of fracturing beyond what the community can quietly absorb. He is expected to raise the child as his own, regardless of what he believes about paternity. He is expected to remain in the marriage. He is expected to demonstrate, through his continued presence and participation in family and community life, that whatever happened has been placed before God and released. What this requires of him internally, the gap between the performance of forgiveness and whatever he actually feels when he looks at the child's face, is something no bishop asks about and no community creates space to. Answer: he carries it the way Amish men carry most things that have no sanctioned outlet, quietly, in work, in prayer, in the particular silence of a man who has been told what he must do and has decided to do it regardless of what it costs him. The child's place. The child at the center of all of this is innocent of every part of it. The Amish community understands this theologically, and in most cases, the community's treatment of the child reflects that understanding, at least officially, at least in front of the parents. What the child cannot be protected from is the texture of growing up in a community that knows its own story. Children absorb what adults do not say. They feel the particular quality of a glance, the hesitation before someone uses their father's name in reference to them, the moments at community gatherings where their presence produces a brief rearrangement in how adults position themselves. They do not have the language for what they are feeling for years. When they eventually find it, the understanding that arrives is specific and permanent. The child's relationship with its father, the man who raised it, regardless of biology, is shaped entirely by what that man chooses to bring to it. Some Amish men in this situation love the child with a completeness that makes the question of biology genuinely irrelevant to the daily life of the family. Others maintain a distance that the child registers as something wrong with itself before it understands what it actually reflects. The child does not choose which version it gets, what the marriage becomes. The marriage that exists after this, whether the confession came or not, whether the forgiveness was performed or felt, whether the bishop's involvement resolved anything or simply formalized what everyone already knew, is a different marriage than the one that existed before the baby arrived. Some couples find their way to something genuine on the other side of it. Not the exact marriage they had before, but a rebuilt version that both of them have chosen to continue building despite what happened inside it. These marriages exist. They are not common in the way the community's emphasis on restoration might suggest, but they are real, and the people inside them carry something that outsiders would not predict: a specific kind of resilience that comes from having survived the worst thing and decided to stay. Other marriages continue in the form the community requires, without the substance that form is supposed to contain. The husband and wife occupy the same household, attend the same church, raise the same children. The performance of marriage continues across years and decades. What passes between them in the private spaces of that household, what is said and what is never said, what is felt and what is managed rather than felt, belongs entirely to them, and they keep it there. Never fully closes. There is something specific about a question that a community cannot formally answer that has no DNA test, no court ruling, no confession that fully satisfies, no silence that fully convinces. It does not close. It does not become history in the way that resolved things become history. It stays present in the community's memory in the form of a hesitation, a careful phrasing, a name mentioned with a particular quality of attention that is different from the way other names are mentioned. The woman lives inside that quality of attention for the rest of her time in the community. She learns to carry it. Some women become quieter over time, drawing their life inward to the spaces, the household, the garden, the children, where that attention does not follow them as directly. Others develop a particular kind of steadiness that is the result of having been looked at very closely for a very long time and deciding not to disappear under the looking. What she knows, and what no one in the community will say directly, is that the question was never entirely about her. It was about what happens when a closed community confronts something it has no clean tool for a truth. It cannot confirm, a sin it cannot prove, a child it cannot categorize, and a marriage it cannot afford to lose. She became the surface on which all of those community anxieties landed. She did not choose that. She simply had a baby. And in a community where everything is seen and everything means something, that was enough to set in motion everything that followed. The question that started with a baby's face never fully closes. It just becomes part of the story the community tells about itself, quietly, in the spaces between the things it says out loud.